right, guys, favorite time of the week. We get to answer a few of your questions. Saagar, what's up first?
Okay, number 1. This is from Fabian Polamo. Great name, great name. Would you guys consider hosting political debates where you bring in 2 or 3 candidates at a time, you ask them questions about policy, and you let them answer with detail and letting the others respond with full thought-out answers? Obviously, yes. I would love to do
that would be incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
But we'll never be allowed to do that.
No. Yeah.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a scenario in which that could happen. Maybe in like a...
It'd have to be local, I think. It would also have to be small enough not to be super nationalized. I honestly don't know. Here's the thing. If you're a high-flying candidate, like let's say one plausible one would be what, like Virginia? The Virginia governor's race? Maybe, right? I mean, it's semi-local.
Yeah.
Terry McAuliffe's not coming anywhere near this set. No way. No. I think the other guy would come just because he needs press, because he's probably desperate.
And that's the thing is like, usually the type of people who would potentially benefit from such a thing would be like an underdog candidate or a challenger in a primary, and then the incumbent just says, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
and as
much it's all risk.
Like it should be, candidates should be punished at the polls for refusing to debate, but there almost never are. Occasionally. The Buffalo mayor's race is one where the incumbent, India Walton, the socialist candidate, just won. The incumbent refused to debate her. Like, maybe that had an impact, but usually they pay no price for it. This is something Iremy also talks about, is like, it should be mandatory that candidates have to get out there and debate, have to actually stand on the stage with whoever's challenging them and hold forth about their ideas.
There's a lot of things that we should change about our current election infrastructure, and actually the debates is one of the worst that we have. Every debate controlled by the same 3 corporate media organizations. Everybody knows what they're going to ask, and they always ask the worst, dumbest questions.
Yeah.
They give so much bias, against some of the candidates. It's really awful.
It's unconscionable that so many of these incumbent candidates just feel like they can say no and never not
and
debate
they don't
at
face
all.
they don't face any consequences.
Yeah.
Except disgusting. Like one, for every Joe Crowley, there's 434 other ones who do get reelected.
Who, take it totally for granted, never get out there and defend their views, and just waltz to re-election.
What's next?
Second question from Kevin Alexander. I'm 21, and you two have taught me how to have discourse with people I disagree with. Why do you think the older generation is so partisan? This is interesting. I like the hopeful idea, actually, that younger generations are less partisan. And I think that I agree with it, actually. I think what I would say is older generations are very locked into this Republican-Democrat binary, where there's like nothing else exists. It's just, these are the 2 establishments, pick one, sign up with the team, and that's it, you're all in. They're like sort of, company town players. And I think younger generations, they have a more fluid view of politics. They think a little bit more outside of the party structures about what could be possible that isn't being offered by the 2 mainstream parties. So I think that's part of it. There may also be something to the kind of hardened Cold War mentality of the older generations that seems to drive a lot of their politics as well. So those are some loose theories. I guess the other thing I'd say is millennials and Gen Z have just seen so clearly the way that both parties have fucked them over.
That's actually, I think,
that they're like, I think I can see through some of the veneer of like, oh, the Democrats are the good guys, or oh, it's the Republicans who are fighting for my freedom, or whatever.
I think, so I always get annoyed about third-party talk because I don't think it's going to work. That being said, I see now, what I understand now, is that so much of that during the election being like, what about a third party, was just being like, I hate both political parties.
Yeah.
I despise both political parties. Boomers and people who are Gen X, they came up in cable news. It's just a whole different world in terms of the media ecosystem. They also had functioning political parties in their lifetimes, so they're actually old enough to remember whenever they could believe in something and it would actually happen. If you're my age, I mean, my earliest memories, political memories, are 9/11, the Iraq War, then the 2008 financial crisis, then the decade of stagnation under Barack Obama, and then the culture war of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And nothing good has happened. I mean, I can't think of a good time under any of that. And so if you have that over a sustained period of time, it just can completely change the way that you look at political parties in general.
I think that's right.
So number 3, from Christopher Kroc. Even if the PRO Act were to somehow pass, if we accept Andrew Yang's claim automation is going to replace a large portion of the working class economy, then is the future hope of growing a labor movement basically a false hope? Wouldn't companies just automate jobs where workers try to unionize? What do you think, Krystal?
I think, first of all, I think it's a really important question. I think it's a very insightful question. It's also a little bit of a nihilistic question of like, what hope is there anyway? The jobs are all going to go away. Labor power is just about rebalancing the scales towards workers having any kind of a say, both in the workplace and in the economy writ large. So if jobs are going to be automated, you want to have workers having a seat at the table and in a position of power in order to, you know, be able to craft that future and what that transition is going to look like and who's going to benefit and who's going to get screwed over and how you're going to make that move to whatever that looks like in the future. So the core of my political philosophy, and unions are one expression of that, is democratizing power and making sure it's not just this small handful of elites who always craft the rules to make sure whether it's more automation or less automation or something in between, that it's going to benefit them. Unions are one way of giving workers a little bit more of a modicum of power so that they have some kind of voice in that conversation.
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think it's all about transition. And if you look at periods of technological transition, power, and more where you had stronger labor movements, then in general, I would say it's a good thing. And that actually, you know, you want adversarial relations and you do want different tables, you do want different voices at the room. And that is generally what works out best for everyone in the American capital system.
Yeah, and also, by the way, unions are the place where there is actually an existence of multiracial working class. I was watching this video of the Frito-Lay workers who are on strike right now.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And it's amazing. I mean, it's like young, old, black, white, immigrant, native, everybody together in this shared purpose. It also reminds me of the work that Max Alvarez is doing in Wisconsin, where you have a similar coalition, like these nuts and bolts where you have a specific problem and people are working in solidarity together. That also makes it harder to use like the weaponization of identity politics and things like that we've seen that have confused politics and created a divisive politics along the wrong lines. I'm in favor of a divisive politics, but it's got to be along the correct lines, and unions help to clarify that.
Yep.
All right, next question. Dorothy Murray says, if the election were this year, do you think Kamala Harris could win the Democratic primary against a challenger? Sadly, the answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Yes. I mean, the media alone, we see how much the Democratic base cares about the media. The Democratic base are largely, electoral primary base, are elderly black people, especially if you consider the South Carolina primary, the power of that, the delegate math that works out against any sort of other type of candidate whenever it comes to Super Tuesday. So yeah, I actually think she would do quite well. And the fact that she's got Joe Biden didn't do well until he's Barack Obama's vice president. Joe Biden is now the most popular Democrat in the country by a mile. Is a 98% approval rating within the Democratic Party. If he says, this is my chosen successor, yeah, I think people would vote for him.
Barack Obama would back that up.
And Obama would back her. So, like,
and
there you go.
Anyone who tried to criticize her would be sexist or racist, all of those horrific things.
Yeah, they would be.
God forbid we have any principles.
They would be ridiculed, and then she would lose by a historic margin. And then they would all just cover it up. And then it would be our
fault of the people who were like, this isn't a good idea.
Right. They'd be like, these racists, they just didn't vote for her because she's a racist. Like, no, she's just terrible. But, you know, I digress. Last question.
What you got?
Nathaniel Chambers, great name. I have heard you guys mention many times that politics are now nationalized, even smaller races, and I agree. Do you think a working class coalition would have a better chance of succeeding if it started with local office and trickled its way up, or if it started at the top and trickled its way down? What would be the advantages and disadvantages to each approach? Really thoughtful question.
I mean, this is kind of a cop-out, but I kind of think you have to do both.
Yeah, you do have to do both.
So you can see with the Sanders movement, like, it almost got there. So a lot of people on the left feel very hopeless after that. When you truly had a working class coalition, I mean, we covered the types of professions of people who were giving to that campaign and how much hope they invested in it and all of that. And so to say like, yeah, we should forget about the top level and we should just go for the grassroots, I don't really support that. But I also see very clearly the way that conservatives have actually been very smart about investing in school board races, local offices, and in those areas, you know, a little bit of grassroots organizing and effort can make all the difference. In Rhode Island, we talked on Rising about how this progressive coalition came together, and in Democratic primaries at the assembly level, these are pretty small, assembly districts. They'd have like a few thousand, 10,000 votes or something in these districts. They were able to oust a bunch of corporate incumbents and bring in a new group with new set of priorities. So I really think you kind of have to try for both.
Yeah, I think you do have to do both. I will be honest. I mean, it's a tough road. Like at this point, all local elections right now are about one thing, critical race. Yeah, I think you pointed this out to me. And by the way, I'm not saying I'm wholly opposed to critical race theory and it should be absolutely kept out of schools. But from a local level, because I support local politics. That being said, you pointed this out to me. What was it, Fairfax County, where they had a meeting to cut the budget?
And
nobody showed up. And then everybody showed up to talk about critical race theory. I mean, look, like, they're both important. I would say funding for the school's pretty important, but guess what gets people going? I think all politics are national, so this all just has to be hashed out at the highest level. I talk to people, I mean, look, J.D. Vance, he's running for Senate right now. His #1 issue is critical race theory. #2 is big tech. #3 is taxing corporations, which is shipping American jobs overseas. At the end of the day, I mean, look, of course they do impact Ohio, but like those are all national issues. Like none of them is really about Ohio. This isn't a criticism of his campaign necessarily.
And it's probably going to be
that's
even
what his
worse.
Voters care about.
Well, and actually that's not even what his voters care about. What he's being pressed on now is like, how loyal are you to Donald Trump?
Actually, now
that's like,
let's be honest, right? Like that's
what the race is really going to turn on. Did you delete your tweets that were critical of Trump, and how did you handle that, and what did you think about him now? Like, these are the things that are driving politics at every level.
And this is the thing. You can't blame, look, this is what people who vote. And a lot of people who complain about not voting, well, most of you don't vote, or a lot of people who complain about politics, most of you don't vote in primaries, and most of you don't vote in the general election. So you know, largely, I get it. Like, I understand why. But if you want to complain, you should try to do something about it. That's why I would encourage people to really pay attention to local elections. Also, primaries is how we are ruled by the most crazy people. We are ruled by the MSNBC and Fox News base. And we allowed ourselves to happen this way because of apathy. And there's only one way out of that, and that's just to care again. I don't know how to fix it.
With politics as sectarian and tribal as they are, a lot of these races, it really doesn't matter once you get to the general election whether the candidate's good or bad, what platform they run on, who they affiliate with. It's all just like, what does the tribal makeup of this district happen to be? That makes your participation in primaries, in picking who that candidate is that's going to go to the general election, all the more important, because that is so much of where the action is right now.
100%. Absolutely 100%.
All right, we love you guys so much.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great weekend. We'll see you back here Monday.